In a skyrocketing economy,
its growth has been phenomenal.
China's industries consume vast numbers of trees, from illegal or uncontrolled logging.
China's wood consumption has tripled.
Importing raw timber from across the globe, China could decide the fate of the planet's forests.
Nature will punish you. Humans will be victims as a result.
In a sawmill not far from Shanghai, China, Zheng Han watches the first stages of raw timber being transformed into planks for floors.
Now, the world forest, the natural forest, is only about 10% left on the earth, and each year there are about 7.3 million hectares of forest disappears from our earth.
Zheng is the head of the forest program in China for the International Conservation Organization, WWF. What she sees here is just a tiny element of a huge and growing problem she's desperately trying to solve.
In the past 10 years, China's wood consumption has tripled. China has become the world's biggest workshop of timber products. So China and Chinese companies do have an influential role in this issue.
With thousands of processing mills like this across China, consuming vast quantities of raw timber, it's easy to see why many conservationists believe the future of the world's forests and the very balance of nature on the planet depends in large part on decisions made in this industry in China. There's nowhere else quite like this on Earth. An economy where growth has been so spectacular, so fast. China is booming, its gross domestic product increasing on average more than 8% each year. And with that growth, China is now a big player in the global economy. Its imports and exports can have major impacts in faraway places, in ways we're still trying to understand.
Today, China is the unknown. Its growth has been phenomenal. For most products, it buys more even than the United States, although the total economy hasn't surpassed that of the U.S. yet. From a per capita point of view, it's not so much, but it's taking off, and I think we haven't yet seen what the impacts of that are.
China's economic growth depends on a constant supply of raw materials, on imports of oil and gas, minerals and fibers, and on raw timber and wood products like pulp and paper, arriving here from the natural forests of Russia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. Like no other raw material, trees that are harvested from natural forests and not from man-made plantations have a true value that exceeds their worth to industry. The natural forests of the planet provide habitat for millions of plant and animal species, and sources of fresh water and sustainable living for human communities. But humans have already destroyed about half of the world's natural forests. Every 2 seconds on the planet, an area of natural forest the size of a football field is cut down. About 100,000 square kilometers of forest loss each year.
The latest data and figures we get from the United Nations tells us that we're actually losing more primary forests faster in the last decade than we have in the previous decade.
And as the forests disappear, they take life with them.
About half of life as we know it has been recorded in forests. The highest concentrations of life occur in tropical forests. So as we lose the tropical forest, we lose life as we know it, much of it that has yet to be recorded by science.
Conservationists say further widespread loss of forests across the planet would cause mass extinctions, chronic droughts, and an impoverished future for millions of people. And they warn the explosive growth of China's demand for timber and wood products has aggravated this crisis. China's own natural forests are severely depleted. And following disastrous floods 10 years ago, the government decided to protect major watersheds by banning or restricting logging across the nation.
The problem is production is actually declining in China. So that means that with increased consumption, they're going to have to fill most of the increased demand and some of what they used to have from local supplies with other sources.
With a severe shortage of domestic wood, China has turned to imports to satisfy increasing demand, more than tripling its import volume in a decade. China's market for industrial timber, pulp, and paper is now the second largest in the world, after the United States. And it's the largest market for logs, raw timber the industry calls roundwood, much of it coming from nations where illegal and uncontrolled logging is causing disastrous loss of critical forest habitat. Inspecting timber mills in eastern China, Zheng Han believes most of these logs were harvested illegally, permitted through bribery and official corruption.
So these are the woods that imported for flooring making in China. Although they have a legal document when they enter into the Chinese custom, but because many of them could be smuggled in those countries, so we can't tell exactly where they are harvested, if the harvest was legal or illegal.
Official records show more than 60% of China's imports of wood products come from Russia, Malaysia, and Indonesia, where illegal, uncontrolled logging is common.
The consequences is large pieces of natural forests are disappearing from those areas. And maybe it's predicted by experts that by 2010, natural forests in Indonesia can only be found in mountainous areas. And in these natural forests, a lot of mammals, birds, animals are living, and many of them are facing the risk of extinction.
China's biggest source of wood is its neighbor, Russia.
It's no accident that Russia is the largest supplier of wood products to China, because there's a border that they just flood across on the eastern side of Russia. So yes, probably most of those are illegally harvested, even by Chinese crews going across illegally and harvesting them.
Raw timber also arrives here from other countries where illegal and destructive logging is common, from Burma, Papua New Guinea, Cameroon, and Congo, where even the barest minimum legal standards of forest management are routinely ignored. And where Chinese logging companies and timber traders have found rich opportunities to buy unlimited supplies of cheap, high-quality wood products. In the international timber industry, Chinese companies have a reputation for shady dealing and corruption, and for not caring about the consequences of their practices.
I think that there are concepts in China that are not really entrenched in culture yet. Corporate social responsibility might be one of them.
This is the challenge Zheng Han faces. An industry with thousands of individual companies competing fiercely for business, searching the market for the cheapest raw materials, most of them unconcerned about the origins of the wood they buy, an industry that is now selling its products everywhere.
China is now the biggest furniture exporter in the world, for example, and also the biggest plywood exporter in the world. So a lot of China's wood consumption is for the world market.
So far from becoming a great sucking sound itself, what we really are beginning to understand is that we're hearing the clacking of the assembly line as China becomes the center of manufacturing for products that then get shipped back to the United States or into Europe. We've seen the import of forest products from China increase by almost 1,000% here to the US, and into Europe by almost 800%.
It is largely worldwide demand for China's wood products that drives Chinese companies to buy raw materials from suppliers who are destroying the planet's forests. It's not just the Chinese who are responsible for this, it's all of us. And that's what gives Zheng Han a glimmer of hope that Chinese industry can change and that the world's forests can still be saved. Coming up, how a few companies are changing the way the industry buys its raw timber. Changes that could be too little and too late.